Sports for Real with Coach Hall. Well, we all know this is Christmas season, but for me, Christmas represents something more than gifts under the tree. It is championship season, and they've been going at high school championships for the last couple of weeks now. Florida wrapped up, last weekend, and Georgia just finished up on Wednesday. And as usual, you have a couple of wild affairs. You have a bunch of teams that make the state playoffs or state championship round that had never won anything playing against each other. And I just thought it was great. And now you have the big daddy of them all, in my opinion, the UIL down in Texas. And as always, I don't see any other state that has the same following, even though they care about it in Georgia, they care about it in Florida, they care about it in California. But Texas out trumps them all. And over these, from Wednesday to Saturday, they're going to draw well over 100,000 fans in Arlington, Jerry World, probably more than that, probably close to 150,000. And I don't think any other state can touch that. But like all the other states, you see the same usual suspects. I see Alito's back in the championship. You have a couple of other teams that tend to show up. In Georgia, you've seen the Coffee counties, the Pierce counties, Milton, and then you also have some teams that you never seen before. In Florida, they had their championships last weekend, and they had usual suspects there, Lakeland and a couple of other schools, and you got some schools that just started building over the last 5-6 years and now start popping up regularly in the state championship. So it doesn't matter how big the state is, you're always going to have the same setup, and it's always going to be the same suspects dominating everything. But I don't want to harp on that. I want to talk about the championship rounds themselves. And in the midst of all of this, Florida, a few days ago, approved new classes for the 24-25 year. The last 2 years, they had this thing when they had the metro and suburban split. The biggest counties in the state, they would compete against each other on 4 different levels. And the same thing with the outskirt towns. Those schools would compete against each other there. In a lot of cases, you have teams that should have been playing against each other in a holistic class setting that were in opposite directions. And it looked like to me that the state every year, they're always trying to find some way to make everybody happy. And I think there's only really one way to do things if you're going to run a state championship. But before I get into that, what they want to do now is go back to the 8 classes. They're going to go back to 8 classes and 1 rural division, which consists of the 32 smallest teams in the state. Everybody else is going to be in 8 different classes based on population, which is fine. And they also approved the open competition, where you're going to take the top 32 teams at the end of the year and put them in one playoff bracket. Now I take that back. The top 8 teams they're going to put in one playoff bracket, and they're going to scrap it out regardless of what classification you're in. And I think that particular aspect is important, because what you end up having is a lot of these teams, they come up with players and you don't quite know where they come from. Now I understand with the open enrollment that they came up with several years ago, anybody can pretty much go anywhere to play football. But hold on. All right, where was I? I was discussing the new playoff formats down here in Florida. And like I say, what you're going to have the top 8 teams, regardless of class, who are going to be playing against each other in an open division championship. And that still doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have the best team in the state that wins the championship, but at least it gives you some kind of carrot to look for, because you have a lot of underhanded stuff going on in the state right now. And as far as I'm concerned, it looks like the association is looking the other way. They have to know what's going on, because you got some teams that are 3-4 times bigger than a school, and they're losing about 2 and 3 touchdowns. That's not supposed to happen. If the population of a school makes a difference, that should never happen. Yeah, if you just happen to have a great 2 or 3A team, and then you rise up and you beat a couple 6 and 7A teams, there's nothing wrong with that. But on a consistent basis, that should never happen. But again, they have this open enrollment thing where you can go anywhere in the state where you want to play. As long as you can get there, they're not going to provide you transportation to do that. But what's interesting about it, a lot of these people, they transfer as soon as the season that they want to play in is over, they go back home or they go some other school to play. And to me, that's not high school football. That's prep school or college. Even the college don't even let you move around like that. So I think it's kind of strange that the state would allow such things to occur. But with this open division thing, I think they need to expand that to a much larger number. Because again, if you're a small school and you're beating teams 4 and 5 times bigger than you by large scores, and where the players coming from? You can't convince me that this is something good. And now with the possibility of NIL on the horizon coming down to Florida, you're going to have the possibility where some of the players could make more money than the coach. So how are you going to keep order? It's kind of hard to keep order now with the way the rules are. You don't want to give me what I want. You don't want to play me. Forget you. I go somewhere else. That's the way these kids think. And they don't care if they leave you high and dry. It's just the way the game goes. But that's the state. But again, they're going to go back to 8 classes and one of them and an additional rural class, which consists of the 32 smallest schools in the state. Now, I can understand changing the smaller classes every so often because the numbers can shift up and down even on that small scale. But the larger schools, I really don't see why you need to keep changing that. Again, if you want a class operation, when you start talking about Florida and the way they do things, they need to look up north to Georgia. Georgia, in those big classes, there's no guesswork about what's going to take place. You got 8 regions, and there's going to be 4 regions, 4 teams in each region to make the playoffs. And not only that, those 4 regions, those 4 teams are going to be seeded, and they're going to go in different directions. So the opportunity of playing somebody from your region again within 2 weeks is not going to happen. And we've seen that in Florida where you beat your district rival, and in the second round of the playoffs, just so happened it's a rematch, just because of the way that they have things structured. And they kind of got rid of that with the seeding, but even with the seedings, you still had some teams in the same district facing each other in the very early period of the playoffs because of the way it's structured. You play within the region. So you take like the top 8 teams of the region, and you might have 3 teams from one district in the same region. So you're never going to escape your district opponent. Again, the best way to do all this stuff, if you're not going to do it like I think you should do, which is 1 district champion, 1 runner-up, 16 districts, 32 teams, go that way if you got to have a runner-up, or go like it was when I was in school, 1 district champion goes to the playoffs, everybody else go do something else. Otherwise, you just making a bunch of money. But if you have to change, switch over to what they're doing in Georgia. Now, the reason why they have districts and not the regional setup the way they have in Georgia is because of the population. You have more population density, more so throughout the state as opposed to Georgia. You got a whole bunch of rural counties up there, so their region might be same distance-wise for Florida, but the thing is, you got more teams in those districts in that area for Florida, so you put them in districts. And the region itself, you still covering the same region. It's just that you can't do it on a district because you don't have as many teams in certain districts than what you have down here in Florida. And I think that's the primary distance. And just in case I screwed that up, let me say it again. You got the same regional distance markers, about the same area range, and what you have in Georgia, you'll play teams within that range. Might be 4 or 5 teams in your region. But if you have the districts like in Florida, you still got that same range, but you're going to have far more schools in that range than you do up in Georgia. So that's why they have districts. They can't play a region schedule where everybody plays everybody. It's just too many teams. For instance, with this, even with the small districts they have here, they still had 11, 12 teams in the region, and you can't play everybody like that. So that's the big thing, and I still think it works out well for Georgia with the way they do things. But speaking of the Georgia-Florida connection, I saw a couple teams in Georgia that I should make a remark about. First of all, Perry, Georgia, broke through and won their first championship. I thought that was great. Where I'm from, it's my understanding that some of our family people around my hometown, they're actually from Perry, Georgia, and they moved down to Florida. So I don't want to call any names, but yeah, congratulations to Perry. That's a good accomplishment. And the other team is Coffee County. Also have some local people that are actually from the Douglas area, and I know a little bit about the Coffee County and what they go through. If you go back through some of my videos, like before the season, I told you about this guy that works for the Coffee County School District. He was down in Jacksonville to see his heart doctor, and he was telling me about some of the things that go on up there. As a matter of fact, they were building some kind of facility for the band, but the football is already, they're going to take that over. Forget the band. We're going to take this facility over. It's like an indoor facility they just finished building down there, and it came at a good time for Coffee because, you know, they just won their first state championship. But their coach, Mike Coe, used to be the coach at Madison County in Florida. He won several championships down with Madison County. And Coe made the jump up to Coffee after Pruitt left to come back to Florida. Pruitt's down in Williston now. Pruitt had a lot of success, but he never could break through and win the championship. But Pruitt, he has won everywhere he's been, and he's turned that Williston program around, and he's to the point now where a couple more pieces, then he's going to be hoisting championship trophies himself again down here in Florida. That's how he ended up there in the first place. But the point I wanted to make, a lot of the better coaches are jumping to places like Georgia and South Carolina, and if you hit the mother load, you can go to Texas and California. Why? Because they're making a whole lot more money to coach football or any other sport up in Georgia and Texas and the other place than they do in Florida. Florida has the athletes, but as far as supporting the programs, if you don't have some kind of dynamite booster club or you're part of some private school system, you're not going to produce what they're producing up in Georgia. And it's all about getting paid now. Things are tight, and if you can get the money, you're a good coach like Mike Coe, you're going to run up there and get it. So it's justified about how he can coach, because he's going from Madison County where he won. Now he's won at Coffee County. Now, again, I've heard for years that you had a flip-flop of talent running across Lowndes County to Madison County and vice versa. So who's to say that everything he does is on the up and up? But regardless of how he was able to put his teams together, seems like everywhere he goes, Mike Coe wins. So it doesn't matter where you're from, can you coach? And it looked like Mike Coe can coach. But I think Florida is losing a lot of talent of coaches to other places because they're not getting paid properly down here. And if NIL comes, it's going to make it worse. These kids, they have a sense of entitlement now. If you get a kid that starts to make money and he's really a superstar kid where people want to funnel that NIL money in, he's going to be making more money than the coach. And then what you're going to have here is a system that is going to explode or implode. I don't know how well it's going in Georgia, but I'd like to talk to somebody about that to see how that is going. Probably no effect at all, because everybody's been eating off the football table in these places like that for years. So I think it's a little bit different down here. I think the system is in danger of imploding when NIL is approved in Florida, because right now the kids already feel entitled, and it's just going to make it worse when you start talking about paying high school players, and full control or discipline needed to win is very important, and it's not going to be there if some kid feels like he's better than you because now he's in high school making money. And I just don't think that's a very good idea. But if you're one of the players getting paid, take advantage of it. Is it a good idea? No, I don't think so. But that's the state of high school football as I see it today. But again, congratulations to Mike Coe. Did a great job. State champions again. Now go back out and repeat. We'll see how it goes. But this is sports for real.